This is Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur with your host, Lynn Freest. Lynn will share ideas and expert advice from people that are walking in your shoes and living their encore careers, where they want and at the pace they want. You'll start a company of one with confidence and knowledge to live a fulfilled life of freedom and ease. Lynn is a coach and leadership consultant whose mission is to show senior leaders and experts how to start something refreshing and new after a full career in the corporate environment.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the podcast, Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur. Today's episode is about a book I've recently read, and it's titled, Who Do You Want to Be When You Grow Old? I'll soon be offering openings in my Encore Career coaching group, and this is a program that will help enable you and a peer group to launch and develop your own Encore careers. So, to get a powerful start, please contact me. So, this episode is a little different. It's going to be not just about creating an encore career, but it's more about not what you want to do, but who you want to be. So, this is a book written by Richard Leider and David Shapiro. And again, the title was, Who Do You Want to Be When You Grow Old? And I've included links to the book in Richard's website. I was introduced to Richard through the Modern Elder Academy. I've seen several sessions of him talking about these ideas of purpose, especially purpose later in life. And again, as I think about it in the framework of, as we start to create an encore career, one of the first areas we talk about is mindset. And obviously, purpose rolls right in with that. Now, this book, like a lot of good books that I have found, is comprised really of a set of questions that you ask yourself because they're offering viewpoints for you to look at, but they're not being very prescriptive. The path to purposeful aging is a journey. It's not a one and done kind of a thing. Some of the freedom we get as we start encore careers or we're just later in life, we can often find ourselves with less that we're required to do or choose to do. But we can spend more time on what we want to do. The idea, and Richard presents one of these ideas, is we maybe move to grow and give and away from achieving. Those are just a couple of the ideas. And then you start thinking about bigger questions. Okay, what's going to get me up in the morning? Why? I'm later in life. I may have some resources, but I may still need to work or want to work. But what really is getting me up? So as we think through some of the things in the book, some of the chapters are old, who, me? And some of this gets to be the power of language. Do we think of ourselves as old, not useful, or do we think of ourselves as wise? The whole idea of being retired, that word retirement, that concept wasn't really very common until about the 1940s or after, when really companies had defined pension plans, Social Security was being used by more people. Even the idea of retirement is a relatively new one. The other thing is, as you get to this idea of language, you want to think about things like, it's not just about aging or not being able to do things, but it's about longevity. Age is being prescriptive, and sometimes age, the words, the language you use, is a judgment. Do I consider myself a sage or do I consider myself a fossil? Language is important to how we think about ourselves and how we interact with others. So some of this, too, gets back into, are we growing old versus just simply getting old? And then probably the easy thing to fall into is, as we're growing older, are we going to be trying to stay young? Or will we accept the fact that, there's certain things changes that happen just as they happened when we were growing up from children into adults. There are changes that happen. And again, the idea, and Richard spends a lot of time on this, in the first half of life, things tend to be about achievement. And I've talked about this idea before. But in the second half of life, sometimes we want to start thinking about impact or legacy or some of those other things that might also be important. Another chapter in the book is titled, Aren't I Somebody? And again, sometimes, and I think it's important for us to think about, I am a human being, not just a human doing. So it's not just about the activities I fill up my day with, but I want to have what I do matter. How can I live a good life and yet live a life of service, live a life of contribution? So another chapter they go to is stop living a default life. You have to start thinking about, okay, how do I get my passing grade in life? Or is my life going forward simply a continuation of where I'm at today? Or do I need to restructure it, which we would often say is creating an encore career. So what's the good life? Richard and David, in their another book called Repacking Your Bags, said, the good life is living in the place you belong with the people you love, doing the right work on purpose. So again, living in the place you belong with the people you love, doing the right work on purpose. So again, just a thought, one of those questions, how do I think about that? Richard goes on to say, as some of the things that we think about in our second half of life, he calls them the 3 M's. It's money, medicine, or health, and meaning or purpose. Are we able to do something about those 3 M's to make them help build that fulfilling life? The other thing is we tend to worry about the future. What's going to happen to me? Well, and again, Richard and David would say to worry means first being clear about our vision of the good life, and second, to be clear about how much is enough to live that vision. So in some cases, as they talk about it, maybe I don't need as many things. Maybe I don't need to be involved in such a wide range of activities. So some of it's to be about choosing and not just, can I achieve more? So another thing as they get farther down there is, again, these chapters are questions. It says, how will my music play on? And that whole idea is, okay, what is my legacy? What are the things that I'm going to share that will, quite honestly, outlive me? So what do I know, and how can I share that for the greater good? There's another author, Parker Palmer, and he's written a lot on education and different things, but it's also about purpose and meaning. And his 2 questions are, as you move into the second half of life, what do I need to let go of? And what do I want to give myself to? That idea of having an abundance versus a scarcity mindset. What do I want to let go of? It no longer serves me. It's things I've done. But on the other hand, at this point, what do I want to really give myself to? Now, going back to the other ideas of money, medicine, and purpose, there are constraints we all work with. And so those are things we all still have to consider. Now, the final thing is actually, it's in the book, but it's actually in another piece of work that Richard did, and it's called The Ultimate Conversation. Now, I won't go into this in great depth, and quite frankly, it's a very confronting and some ways disturbing conversation. But he says, and I'm slowly getting around to it, but how do you answer this can be kind of important and become very useful for you. So he has 3 questions that he calls the ultimate conversation. First one is, what do you think happens when you die? Literally, what do you think happens at that point? How would you like to die? Often people would say quickly or without pain, but anyway, just be thinking about that. And then finally, and this loops back to some of the other things around purpose, what gifts do you want to leave the world before you die? So it's the idea of, okay, what am I going to do that helps the world go forward when I'm gone? So this is, like I said, a confronting conversation. Maybe that's something you don't need to or want to talk about yet, but it's something that you could have out there. So just to kind of wrap up, I wanted to do a quick review of literally some of the questions in the book. The first chapter was old. Who, me? That whole idea of I don't think of myself as old, and you don't have to. So it's just the idea. Then the second thing they looked at was, if we all end up dying, what's the purpose of living? So how do you find purpose in this second half of life as you see that you are into the second half and it's not unending like maybe you thought in your 20s? Chapter 3, I mentioned earlier, aren't I somebody? Often the thing that, really bothers people is they've lost relevance. So that's another way to think of it. How can I be and remain relevant in some fashion? Then we mentioned also earlier, chapter 4 was, I'm living the good life. Is it a good life and a whole life? How am I growing in this next part of my life? And chapter 5 was the flip side of that. So how do I stop living a default life, just living what I've done and trying to extend it into the future, maybe a life of achievement or trying to stay young or whatever it may be. And the next chapter was, am I having a late life crisis? It's not a crisis so much as a reinvention, or as Chip Conley says, a midlife edit. You're just rethinking about some of these things that maybe aren't serving you as well moving forward. The next one, will I earn a passing grade in life? Again, I talked about that earlier, and I said, what do you want your legacy to be? Is it you want people to know that you did a whole bunch of projects? Do you want people to know that you created a whole bunch of money for a company? Or is there something else that you want to say that, hey, this is what I did in life? Chapter 8 is, can I grow whole as I grow old? We talked about that earlier. Is at this point, it's not as much about achievement as it might be, let's really think back on what I've done. And then the next chapter is, how will my music play on? It's the other piece. Okay, what can I do now that will serve the future, even when I'm not here creating my work, as it were? So with that, it's the idea, and that last one is interesting. They suggest it's like writing a letter from the afterlife to your present life. What are the people going to say about you when you're not here? What will the people appreciate about you when you're not here? It's probably that not that you handled 200 emails a day. It could be very well something else. But you have a chance to think about that. What do you want to do? So, again, the book is Who Do You Want to Be When You Grow Old by Richard Leider and David Shapiro. I encourage you to check out the book. And again, because it's really a set of questions and they're not giving a prescription, they suggest you live with it, journal about it, and actually find somebody to discuss it with. So moving back to my why from the You Are the Brand, and this takes this idea of purpose and back to what's driving my thinking and my work right now. What pisses you off? With me, it's dealing with ageism in the workplace and culture. It's also not letting myself be sucked into limiting myself by my own perceptions of ageism. What breaks your heart? Again, it's seeing talented elders forced onto the sidelines when they can and want to still make good and significant contributions. And so what's the big problem I'm trying to solve at this point? What's my purpose? I'm trying to help modern elders create a fulfilling encore career in whatever way they think that it matters to them. So remember, with an encore career, the rewards are great. You can work when you want, where you want, and you can do the work you love. So to get a powerful start, please contact me. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.